Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Luffy mastered the god Haki, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I do not own this fanfic, and also make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, GreyNimbus, and support him for writing this awesome fanfic. Link is in the description. Let's begin this story. How long are you gonna lay there like a moron? Our story begins with the memory of two brothers staring out into the ocean from a cliff. The boy who spoke first was Porta's Ace, the eldest. Ace is a 10-year-old boy with curly black hair and freckles on his face. He wore a green sleeveless t-shirt with the two kanji phrases for innocence and violence on the front and a black elbow guard on his left arm. Below that were his black knee-length shorts and dark brown slippers on his feet. His face was riddled with bandages on his nose, left cheek, and forehead, courtesy of injuries he sustained during a recent fight for his life, as well as his brothers. Speaking of which, let's move on to the youngest, Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy is a 7-year-old boy with shaggy black hair. His special feature was the crescent-shaped scar with 3 stitches under his left eye. He wore a purple sleeveless shirt, blue cargo shorts with white cuffs, and a pair of sandals. But what sticks out more was Luffy's treasured straw hat with a red band, which he was clutching tightly over his head while he lay on the grass, sulking. By the way, the treasure we were keeping in the forest is gone, Ace said, crossing his arms. Luffy didn't respond. His only reaction was silent sobs. Recently, Ace, Luffy, and their late brother, Sabo, were working together to prepare for the day that they would go out to sea and live the life of free men pirates. To do so, the trio honed their survival skills by hunting large wild beasts, fighting street thugs, stealing from nobles, and saving up money to fund their voyage. However, they barked up the wrong tree when they decided to steal money from a crew of vicious pirates. The Blue Jam Pirates. Fearing that their treasure stash may have been compromised, Ace and Sabo relocated every last doubloon with haste. Unfortunately, Luffy was stupid enough to get captured by the pirates, who later began torturing Luffy for information. But he never spoke. Ace and Sabo considered the possibility and stormed in to rescue their little brother. After the incident, the boys managed to escape with their lives, but Luffy was nearly traumatized from the painful experience he just had. But he was able to keep a brave face. Unfortunately, that incident was just a prologue to another tragedy. To the north of their forest playground was the Great Terminal, a scrapyard full of criminals and dirty dealings to go with them. Beyond that was a city with a high, solid stone wall, handily keeping the nearby criminals at arm's length. Beyond the wall lies many residential buildings which house those with noble blood. This was the shining jewel of the Goa Kingdom, the capital of Dawn Island. Said to be the most beautiful place in the East Blue. Not a hint of trash could be found on its streets. During an excursion to the Goa Kingdom, the 3 brothers attempted to trade in some crocodile skin, while posing as an adult by stacking on top of each other, while wearing a full body cloak. Unbeknownst to Ace and Luffy, they discovered that Sabo is a runaway noble. Sabo explained to his brothers that he ran away to avoid an arranged marriage to a royal family. His parents cared more about status than their son. Ace and Luffy took it surprisingly well, saying it doesn't matter where Sabo came from. They each shared the same dream. Things got worse, though, when Sabo was then captured by the Blue Jam Pirates, who were hired by his father to bring him back home. When they did, he was introduced to his newly adopted noble brother, Stelly. Sabo was shocked that his parents already considered replacing him. He was later informed provocatively by Stelly that Great Terminal was due to be set ablaze the following day. The aristocracy planned to burn away the trash outside the city, along with its inhabitants, to make a good impression for the upcoming visit of the Celestial Dragons, the descendants of the founders of the world government. A group of important people, including a world noble, were sent to inspect the East Blue for a suitable candidate to join their ranks. Sabo could no longer stand living in such a dark country that felt like a prison. On the night of the fire, Sabo escapes from his home to try and warn the denizens of Great Terminal of the impending disaster, but arrives too late. The Blue Jam Pirates, once again hired by the nobles, were charged with the task of starting the fire, only to find out later that they were conned. They were promised a noble status and titles as a reward for their deeds, only to find themselves trapped in the fire, with the entrance to the city locked tight. Failing to prevent the many needless deaths in Great Terminal, Sabo, in despair, was then approached by a headed man in the deserted streets, who asks what's wrong. That man was Monkey D. Dragon, leader of the Revolutionary Army, as well as Luffy's father. Sabo confides the truth of the fire to Dragon, and that the nobles and king are responsible. He goes on to say that the kingdom smells worse than the Great Terminal, as well as its people, and as long as he stays in the kingdom, he will never be free. Dragon was greatly shocked at what Sabo said, and that the Goa Kingdom, the place of his birth, has now forced their children to say such things. Meanwhile, at Great Terminal, the remaining squatters that haven't burned down were getting closer to a fiery death, until an unnatural gust of wind created a safe path through the fire, leading to a ship at the coast. The ship belonged to the Revolutionary Army, with some of its members on board, including Dragon. The leader then welcomes those who desire to fight for their freedom onto his ship before sailing away. Ace and Luffy soon found themselves thrown into the mix. In their attempt to bring back Sabo, they also got trapped in the fire. But in the mass hysteria and confusion, the trapped Blue Jam pirates. Outmatched, the boys were nearly killed until they were saved by their adopted family, Curly Dayton, and the mountain bandits. During the struggle, Dayton and Ace stayed behind to fight Blue Jam and his crew, while the rest of the mountain bandits and Luffy make a quick escape. The following day, Ace and Dayton returned to the bandits' hideout to the relief of Luffy and the other bandits. One of the bandits, Dogra, later returns from town to inform them of some tragic news. In the meantime, Sabo was later recaptured by the police and brought back to his prison home. Fully accepting that he will never find freedom here, he leaves the island the day the Celestial Dragon is set to arrive. Sabo commandeers a small ship, flying a Jolly Roger, and attempts to set sail. But his ship was quickly destroyed by a world noble, supposedly killing Sabo along with it. Later, Ace discovers a letter left behind by Sabo. The letter tells Ace to take care of Luffy. This brings us to the current moment. Luffy went to the Cape by himself to mourn Sabo's death. Ace soon discovers him, and continues his speech. Someone must have gotten to it. Survivors from Blue Jam's crew must have taken it, or maybe the military. Either way, there's nothing we can do at this point. Meh, I don't care about the treasure. Not anymore. I mean, those were pirate savings I was sharing with Sabo. And you too, later on, I guess. But in the end, he didn't need money to set sail. So why should I get bent out of shape about it? After all, what's the point in having treasure if you can't even protect it? Luffy finally responds with a sniffle. Hey Ace. Ace looks down at him. I want to get stronger, stronger, and stronger, and stronger. I want to be the strongest in the world. And then I'll protect everyone. I won't lose anyone I care about. Ace turns his gaze back to the ocean. You gotta make me a promise, Luffy continued. I'm begging you, please don't die, Ace. Cut it out. Ace exclaimed, and bumped Luffy on his head, although the latter barely felt it. You ought to be worried about dying before I do. What did you forget? You're a lot weaker than me. Listen, and you listen up good. I'm never going to die. Luffy sits back up, still clinging to his straw hat, and nods his weeping head. His tears and snot ran down his face. You know, Sabo told me to take care of you. So I promise, I'm not gonna die, okay? Never. At least, not as long as I've got a wussy little brother who needs me to protect him. Why yeah. Okay. Luffy whimpered. Smarts aren't exactly my strong point. So I still don't really understand why Sabo was killed. But whoever did it, they must be opposed to freedom. Because they shot him down before he even got a taste of it. But we shared that same cup of sake with him, and we're still alive. Luffy was beginning to calm down, thanks to his big brother's comforting words. Before they lost Sabo, the trio stole a bottle of sake from Dayton, and shared it between them. Ace believed that all it takes to become brothers is to share some sake. Whether they were together or apart, on different crews or different ships, they each shared the same dream of living freely. And most of all, they would always be brothers. Luffy, listen to me, okay? Ace continued, there's only one way to live without any regrets. Luffy, still sniffling, nodded, Someday, we're gonna set sail, just like Sabo. We're gonna live the way we wanna live. More free than anyone else. 10 years later, Marine HQ, Marineford, Grand Line. Sounds of gunfire, cannon fire, swords clinging against sword, and cries of battle erupted throughout the frozen battlefield of Marineford. Many men, both Marine and pirate alike, were dropping like flies on both sides without either side giving an inch. This historical battle was known as the War of the Best. Ace, also referred to as Fire Fist Ace, and 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, was captured by the same pirate he pursued to punish for betraying his crew, by committing the most unforgivable sin a pirate could, killing one of his fellow crew members, claiming the spoils, and then jumped ship. That traitor was known as Marshal D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, a power-hungry pirate who got his hands on the world's most powerful known Logia-type devil fruit, the Dark Fruit. He concocted an elaborate plan to gain even more power by capturing Ace, who was once his superior among the Whitebeard pirates before his betrayal, and handing him over to the Navy, and gaining a position as one of the 7 warlords of the seas. With that title, he also gained the privilege of accessing Impel Down, the world's most secure underwater prison. He snuck in with the intent of going down to the lowest level of the prison, and recruiting the most heinous and irredeemable villains in the world. The perfect addition to his pirate crew. Straw Hat Luffy learned of Ace's situation, and set out to go rescue his brother from execution. But he wasn't alone. Edward Newgate, aka Whitebeard, captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, the strongest man in the world, one of the 4 emperors, and adopted father of Ace, retaliated to the threat of Ace's death by answering the call to war. He gathered all his forces and allies to lead a full-scale assault on the stronghold of the Marines. Both sides brought their best to the table in a power struggle of such a high magnitude that the outcome would decide the beginning and the end of an era. Luffy joined the fight, creating chaos wherever he went, all to save his brother's life. He teamed up with Whitebeard, as well as some new allies, and past enemies he made. At first, Luffy failed to break Ace out of Impel Down before they transferred him to Marineford for his public execution. But with his miraculous good luck, he prevailed through every obstacle that got in his way, eventually leading him to a war zone. But the chaos was far from over. Luffy had to fight through his own grandfather, Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp, Aka Garp the Fist, and hero of the Marines. Garp had more than enough strength to stop his rebellious grandson, but didn't have the heart to kill his own kin. Ace, we're getting you out of here. Luffy, no. But his luck wasn't enough to save Ace. After succeeding to free Ace from his restraints, the two brothers rushed to flee from the battle with what's left of his crew, only to fall for a taunt by Marine Admiral Sakazuki, aka Kainu. The ruthless user of the magma fruit called Whitebeard a coward for running from a fight. Ace's pride couldn't allow that remark to go uncorrected. Turning around, despite Luffy's pleas, Ace charged at the Admiral in rage, attacking with a fist of fire granted to him by eating the flame fruit. Despite his best efforts, fire was no match for magma. Luffy wanted to stop Ace from throwing his life away after he just saved him, but was too weak and exhausted from fighting for so long. In an attempt to strike at Luffy while he was vulnerable, Akainu's molten fist was blocked by Ace, who now had a burning hole right through his torso. On the ground was a small piece of paper, a Viva card. 1 minute it was whole, the next, it was quickly burning away. A Viva card is a special paper that represents the life force of its owner. This one belonged to Ace. He gave it to Luffy some time ago, telling him that paper would reunite them one day. But now it's the countdown to Ace's inevitable demise. Luffy couldn't believe what he witnessed. He couldn't look at anything but Ace, who stood there, gritting his teeth after he coughs up blood, as if knowing that his life is about to end. Luffy started with eyes wide and full of disbelief. Ace, Akainu pulled back his fist, still burning, but Ace refused to cry out in pain. Ace fell forward, landing in Luffy's arms. The younger brother lifted his hand from the hole in Ace's back to find it covered in blood. Sorry, Luffy, Ace whispered in his now broken voice. I tried. Don't worry. We'll get you some help, Luffy said fearfully. Ace, despite the state he was in, couldn't help but smile. Thank you for trying so hard, but this is as far as I can go. Come on, what are you saying? This isn't over yet. Luffy's words were only getting harder to say. Before Akainu could finish what he started, two division commanders of the Whitebeard Pirates, Marco the Phoenix and Flower Sword Vista, joined the scene to stop the Mad Admiral. They both succeeded in pushing him back. Marco growled, we were so close. Don't give up yet. We still have a chance. Vista shouted. Akainu, now with a large magma leaking welt across his neck, hissed in pain, you're too late. Marco and Vista pressed on with their attacks. This way, Doctor, quick, exclaimed one of the nearby Whitebeard pirates, it's not looking good. The man with the black coat, top hat, and doctor's bag approached Ace from behind to examine the wound, but he feared the worst. I can feel my life, Ace struggled to say, slipping away, so, listen to me, Luffy. Ace, there's one thing that hurts, Ace confessed softly, I wouldn't be around to see you fulfill your dream. Tears were now weeping out of Luffy's eyes. I know you can do it because you're my little brother, Ace said, gently panting for air. Do you remember that day? I did it. I live with no regrets even though it ended this way. Can't complain now. Well, I can. Luffy wailed, you can't die like this. Sure, things could have gone better, but it's alright. Luffy's tears now lead to sobs. I can't raise my voice anymore. I'm too weak. Tell everyone else what I'm about to say, alright. Not wanting to miss a single word, Luffy drowned out the noise of the surrounding battlefield to hear Ace's final words. But he still couldn't accept the fact that Ace was dying. He lost one brother before, to which he declared that he would get stronger no matter what it takes, so he wouldn't have to go through that pain again. Pop's my family, and you, Luffy, thank you for caring about someone like me who has bad blood in his veins. Ace whispered as the last tears he'll ever shed now pours down his cheeks, mixed in with his blood. Despite everything that's happened, Ace sounded so happy. Thank you for loving me. Thank you so much. With those final words, Ace smiled as his eyes slowly shut for good. His whole body slackens as if trying to stay in Luffy's arms for just a moment longer, but all the strength he had left had all but slipped away, and he fell. Ace was dead. The Viva card burned to nothing. Never before had Luffy been filled with so much feeling and pain as he does now. Stunned, Luffy's arms fell to his side. Looking down desperately, he spotted the gaping hole that destroyed the mark of the Whitebeard pirates on Ace's back. A mark that was his pride. A mark he used to shield his kid brother from the fate that claimed him instead. Ace's face held no pain, though. In the end, it was full of peace, complete with a smile. But what troubled Ace deep down before he died was that he was unable to fulfill his promise to Sabo. Ace. His brother's blood was still dripping off his hands, his chest getting tighter and tighter. Ace's dying words echoed in his ears. He could barely hear the cries and screams of Ace's comrades as they mourned their fallen friend. Unable to hold in all the built-up despair, Luffy's whimpers turned to cries and screams that grow louder and louder. And with one last shriek of pain and shock, he raised his head to the sky. Then darkness fell. Present, the Skena, calm belt. Luffy gasped, eyes widened as he sat upright wearing nothing but his blue shorts and sandals, as well as some bandages wrapped around his abdomen and right upper arm. What was new was the X-shaped scar on his chest, courtesy of Akainu after he blacked out, from what he'd been told. His trademark straw hat, though, was missing. He was dripping with sweat from head to toe, and panting desperately for air, and staring around wildly as if predators were hiding in the darkness of the night. "Did you have a nightmare?" asked a concerned voice. Luffy looks up to see his mentor. "Really?" The old man approached him, holding a drink of some kind, as if he expected something like this. Dark King Silver's Rayleigh is an elderly man in his 70s with a well-built body. His white facial hair was arranged and battled across his lower jaw. He has a long and old vertical scar over his right eye, which was behind his round glasses. He was dressed in a plain t-shirt, shorts, sandals, and a large silver hooded cloak draped over it all with the hood down. He met Luffy when he and his crew arrived at Sabati Archipelago, located at the very end of Paradise, the first half of the Grand Line. He's a retired pirate who once served as the first mate and right hand of the late Gold D. Roger, the king of the pirates. Because of this, Rayleigh, despite his old age, was an extremely powerful individual. After his old crew disbanded 22 years ago, he became a coding mechanic working at Sabati Archipelago. He quickly became friends with Luffy and his crew, the Straw Hat Pirates, after they discovered him at a slave trading auction house, posing as a slave. He was planning on robbing whoever bought him before escaping as a free man again. After learning of Luffy's whereabouts after the war, Rayleigh swam to the island of Amazon Lily, an empire ruled by the Kuja, a tribe made up of entirely female warriors, located in the Calm Belt. When he arrived there, Rayleigh offered Luffy two choices on what he wanted to do next: meet up with his crew, and go to the New World, the second half of the Grand Line, unprepared, or stay, and train for 2 years. "You covered in sweat," Rayleigh added. Luffy slowly looks up at him fearfully, as if expecting him to be a Akainu. Rayleigh holds out the mug to the young man. "Here, try drinking this." Luffy desperately takes it, and doesn't think twice before chugging down the contents almost as quickly as a certain friend of his with a good bottle of booze. "There you go," Rayleigh reassured. After losing his big brother, Ace, during the War of the Best at Marineford, Mickey D. Luffy was left in a fragile state, both mentally and physically, for a while. Miraculously, he escaped thanks to the assistance of Trafalgar D. Waterlaw, the Surgeon of Death, captain of the Heart Pirates, and fellow Supernova, in his submarine. For 3 straight days, Luffy was in a medically induced coma after blacking out. Thanks to Law's generous medical services, Luffy's injuries were on the path to healing, but his mind was still shattered. The first thing Luffy noticed when he gained consciousness was that he was back in the jungles of Amazon Lily. Looking down, he saw that his entire body was covered head to toe in bandages, looking almost like a mummy. His thoughts were interrupted by recollecting memories of what went down at Marineford and what he had lost. The visions drove Luffy berserk, which drove him to destroy the trees and boulders around him. Even while completely wrapped in bandages, Luffy was slowing down, nor did he feel the pain of his wounds reopening. After an unforeseen amount of time had passed, Luffy finally calmed down, now breathing heavily. Feeling his strength leaving him, he dropped down to all fours, and noticed he was bleeding out of the various spots of his bandages. He was then approached by a large figure. A whale shark fisherman who Luffy met in Impel Down where he was held prisoner. This was Knight of the Sea Jin, a former member of both the Sun Pirates and the 7 Warlords of the Seas. He resigned from the latter during the War of the Best for refusing to participate in the battle. Before the war, Jin was freed from Impel Down by Luffy after he made it to the lowest level of the prison. In return, Jin offered to repay his liberator by assisting him in Ace's rescue. After the war ended, Jin accompanied Luffy in Law's submarine back to Amazon Lily. Convincing Luffy that he wasn't dreaming, Jin could only watch as Luffy cried his eyes out while yelling out Ace's name. Before Luffy could go on another temper tantrum, Jin was able to pin him down and remind him of what he has left in this world. Luffy still has his crew. Remembering that he had to meet them back at Sabati Archipelago, where they first got separated, Luffy and Jin walked back to the coast where the Heart Pirates docked their submarine. It was at that time that Rayleigh appeared from the ocean, saying that he swam through the calm belt which was overcrowded with sea kings. But knowing his strength, nobody was surprised. Out of the 2 choices Rayleigh gave to Luffy, he decided to be smart for once, and choose to hold off on meeting up with his crew to train for 2 years. After getting the message across to the scattered members of the Straw Hat Pirates, the Kuja Pirates, led by Pirate Empress Boa Hancock, one of the 7 Warlords of the Seas, offered to take them to the nearby island of Liscana, which is a harsh island with 48 seasons per year which changes almost weekly. Not to mention it was inhabited by colossal beasts that were at least more than 10 times their usual size. It was a perfect place to train. 3 months have passed since Rayleigh started training Luffy in the arts of Haki. Haki is the mysterious power that allows the user to utilize their willpower and spiritual energy for various purposes. Rayleigh explained and demonstrated the different forms of Haki to Luffy on the first day of their training. There were 3 separate categories of Haki: Observation Haki, Armament Haki, and Conqueror's Haki. Observation Haki gives the user a 6th sense of the world around them, allowing them to sense the presence, strength, and emotions of other people. It also grants limited precognitive abilities, allowing the user to sense their opponent's intentions and predict their actions and attacks before they happen. Armament Haki allows the user to use their spiritual energy as armor to defend against attacks, as well as make their attacks more potent. It can also be used to bypass the defenses of devil fruit powers that make the user somewhat invincible, such as Loja intangibility. A person can apply Armament Haki to a section of their body, over their entire body, and even imbue it onto their weapons. Conqueror's Haki, the rarest form of Haki, allows the user to exert their willpower over others. This type of Haki cannot be attained through training, and only 1 in several million people are born with this ability. It is said that 1 in a million people who can possess this type of Haki have the qualities of a king, otherwise known as the color of the Supreme King. After witnessing Rayleigh's demonstrations on a giant wild elephant, Luffy recalled moments on his journey when he subconsciously used Conqueror's Haki, but didn't know what it was. He also recalled witnessing certain people use observation Haki, as well as being on the receiving end of Armament Haki. After Luffy finished his drink, he looked around until his eyes stopped at the large campfire that was cooking up a large chunk of meat that he would happily eat later. "Do you feel okay?" Rayleigh asked. "Not really," Luffy answered hesitantly. Rayleigh cocked an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" "It's not enough." "What? You need a refill." "Not the drink, my training." "Luffy, it's only been a few months, and you're already making a lot of progress," Rayleigh reminded him. "You can use Armament Haki most of the time now. Your observation Haki is getting good, but still needs work, and you've just started working on that new 4th gear of yours. We still have 21 months of training left. So why do you say it's now enough?" "I know I'm getting stronger," but Luffy lowered his head, staring into his empty mug. "I just don't think it'll be enough. I want to be even stronger than I thought imaginable. I want to be able to protect my friends and their dreams." Luffy paused. "I trained for years before I set out to sea. By the time I left my home village, I was already the strongest pirate in the East Blue. When I first got to the Grand Line, I started running into fighters who were more challenging than the last. My first big challenge was Crocodile. The former warlords. Yeah, him. He was the second Loja I ever fought, and I lost to him twice before I finally took him down. Second. Who was the first?" "The first was that Smokey guy that I met in Lodetown. He's a Marine." "You mean Commodore Smoker?" Luffy gave his mentor a questionable look. "Yeah, that's what I said." Rayleigh ignored Luffy's obliviousness. "Anyway, you were saying, right?" "Anyway, after losing to Crocodile more than once, I know that it was only a matter of time before I ran into even stronger enemies than him. That's when I found out about 2nd gear. To be honest, I learned it by accident." "Yes, you showed it to me a while ago," Rayleigh reminisced while stroking his beard. "You used your elasticity to accelerate your blood flow, burning through more nutrients and oxygen. It makes you move a lot faster. A process that would kill any normal person." "Yeah," Luffy nodded in agreement, "but Chopper told me that it was taxing on my body. I love the technique, but if it destroys my body, I'm not gonna get much done. 3rd gear is pretty much the same, and 4th gear is even harder. Yes, there's the drawback of 3rd gear that shrinks to the size of a toddler for about a minute after you release all that air in your bones. But it's too soon to know what you can do with 4th gear. You still need to master your Haki." "I'm not worried about my Haki, it's just," Luffy paused. "I don't think I'm using my devil fruit powers to the fullest." "You know, come to think of it," Rayleigh pondered, catching Luffy's attention. "You said the name of your fruit was the Gum Gum fruit, right?" Luffy nodded. Rayleigh went over to his backpack and pulled out 4 books. 3 of them had very similar covers, but the other one looks like it hasn't even been published. Devil Fruit Encyclopedia I, Paramecia, by Dr. Vegapunk. Devil Fruit Encyclopedia 2, Zone, by Dr. Vegapunk. Devil Fruit Encyclopedia 3, Loja, by Dr. Vegapunk. Devil Fruit Encyclopedia X, Classified. "What are those?" Luffy asked. "These are the latest Devil Fruit Encyclopedia books that I acquired in the New World many years ago, back when I sailed with my old crew. They're extremely hard to get, especially the complete set. They were written by the world government's lead scientist, Dr. Vegapunk, the smartest man alive." "So?" Luffy seemed uninterested. "If we can find your fruit in these books, maybe you'll learn something new. Now, let me take a look." "Paramecia, right?" Rayleigh asked, while already flipping through the pages of the Paramecia book. "Aha." Skimming through the Alphabet Eye's catalog of devil fruits, Rayleigh stopped when he got to G. "Why don't you grab a bite off the spit while I do some quick research, Luffy?" "You look hungry," the old man said, not looking up from his book. Why meat?" After several minutes of eating his fill, Luffy patted his now fat belly like a bongo. He let out a satisfied sigh after licking his fingers clean. "Find anything yet, Rayleigh?" Luffy asked, turning towards his mentor. "Yes, and no," Rayleigh answered ominously. "Huh?" Luffy cocked an eyebrow in disbelief. "There's no record of a Gum Gum fruit anywhere in the Paramecia volume. However, Rayleigh picked up the classified volume. I did find something similar under classified." Luffy stood up and walked over to where Rayleigh was sitting to get a closer look at the book. Rayleigh started flipping through the pages again because he didn't bookmark what he found. "What did the devil fruit that you ate look like, Luffy?" He asked his student as he continued flipping through the pages. Let me think. Luffy put a finger to his forehead in hopes of trying to think harder to jog his memory. It was blue-violet, I think. It was round, like a bowl. It had a stem on top, and it was covered in swirls. Oh, and it tasted really gross. The moment Luffy finished describing the fruit he ate, Rayleigh's page flipping came to a stop. What was revealed on one of the pages was an illustration of the very fruit that Luffy just described at the top of the right page. Yeah, that's the one. That's the fruit I ate. Luffy confirmed. He was starting to get excited about knowing more about his fruit. Look further down. Luffy did as he was told, and looked at what else was written on the page. The first thing he noticed was the name under the picture. A name he was not familiar with. A name he didn't expect. Due to its unique nature, this devil fruit grants the user a baseline body with the properties of rubber, giving the user's body limitations and restrictions similar in nature to that of a common paramecia type. The fruit's true power as a mythical zone type lies dormant until the user can successfully achieve an awakening. After awakening the fruit's true power, the user gains the abilities and appearance of the mythical sun god, Nika, granting their already rubbery body more strength, freedom, and creativity, and turning the user into what is known as the warrior of liberation. According to the legend that was inscribed on the ancient texts, the warrior of liberation was once revered as the sun god by slaves from ancient times for bringing freedom and joy to those around them. Because of the nature of this legendary being, they are described as the most ridiculous power in the world. After reading that final paragraph out loud, Rayleigh closed the book with a hard slap. He and Luffy were taking their time processing all this new information that completely changed their view of Luffy's devil fruit. With this new info, we now know that your devil fruit powers come from his own type. Rayleigh stated, your body has already adapted to the belief that it's a paramecia type, but we can fix that later. Luffy scratched the back of his head. I'm a little confused. If I've had zone powers this whole time, how come I've never transformed like all the other zone type users I've seen? It's most likely because you ate a variety of the human fruit that makes it unnoticeable, since you're already a human, to begin with. Vegapunk must have known that somehow, which is why he wrote it down in classified records. I can't tell whether he gave it to my crew by accident or on purpose. Rayleigh puts his books away before pulling out something else that jingled like a chain. Showing it to Luffy, it revealed a pair of sea prism stone handcuffs. Sea prism stone is a rare and unique substance that radiates the same energy as the sea, which can neutralize and drain the abilities of devil fruit users. What are those for? Luffy asked, pointing to said handcuffs. They're sea prism stone handcuffs, Rayleigh answered. We'll be wearing them while training. Why? After our little discovery, I'm gonna have to completely change your training regiment. The first step is for you to stop using your devil fruit powers. What? Luffy shouted, his eyes widened in shock. How's that supposed to help me get stronger? As it said in the book, the only way to unlock your devil fruit's true potential and, by extension, yours, is to awaken that dormant power. What the heck does it even mean? Rayleigh sighed. Here, I'll explain, so listen closely. Awakening is the special stage in which devil fruit users unlock the true potential of their fruit's power, not only affecting themselves, but their surroundings too. Understand? Millimeters. Luffy nodded. Good, you catching on quickly. Rayleigh makes a swift motion with his hand. Suddenly, the sea prism stone handcuffs disappeared from his hand. Luffy suddenly felt weak. All his energy was quickly drained out of his body, causing him to slouch over the log he was sleeping against earlier. He moaned in exhaustion while noticing that the handcuffs that Rayleigh was just holding were now clamped around his wrists. Hey, Luffy groaned weakly. What'd you do that for? This is gonna be your training. Our first priority is getting you to completely master your Haki before moving on to your devil fruit awakening. We'll be restricting the use of your devil fruit powers until you've mastered Haki, as well as helping you get used to the weakness of the sea prism stone. By the time you take those off, you'll have a high tolerance to its effects. How am I supposed to train my Haki when my hands are bound like this? Luffy was referring to the short chain that linked the cuffs together. Instead of getting a verbal answer, Rayleigh crouched next to Luffy before grabbing the chain with his left hand. Sea prism stone is as strong and durable as diamonds. But once you have completely mastered Haki, you'll be able to do this. Rayleigh's hand was suddenly clad in a shiny black coating hardening, the most basic application of armament Haki. So far, Luffy had learned how to do that much. But what the rubber man didn't recognize was that Rayleigh's hardened hand was now emanating a green, flowing ore. Next thing he knew, the chain link was completely crushed under the old man's grip. Pulling his hand back, the broken chain was now detached, leaving only the cuffs that were still around Luffy's wrists. Luffy may have been weakened, but he couldn't take his eyes off the amazing feat that his mentor had just demonstrated. That was so cool. What was that? Luffy asked cheerfully, despite the effects of the sea prism stone. That Rayleigh began explaining as he deactivated his Haki was a more advanced type of armament Haki, known as internal destruction. I learned it in the New World. I was able to emit my armament Haki, making it flow into my target's body, and destroy it from the inside out on contact. This technique can deal devastating internal damage, bypassing any defense, no matter how strong or durable it is. Hey, wait a minute, Luffy interrupted. Is that what you did when you removed Kami's slave collar back at Sabati? That's right, Rayleigh answered. I'm surprised you were able to put the pieces together. Looks like we found something you're interested in. Of course I'm interested. I have to get stronger so I can protect my friends. I'll do whatever it takes to become the strongest. Luffy sat up, eyes filled with the fires of determination. Rayleigh smiled proudly, knowing he found just the right motivation he needed to pull through his upcoming training regiment. Even more proud of the fact that Luffy was already resisting the effects of the Sea Prism Stone without even noticing. He barely had them on for 2 minutes, which slightly scared the retired pirate. I admire your determination, Luffy. You've proven yourself to be a reliable leader to your crew. They must be proud of you. Luffy nodded with a smile. Rayleigh looks up at the moon through a gap in the jungle's thick canopy. The sun will be rising soon, so get some rest while you can. Tomorrow's training is gonna be even tougher, right? Night, old man. Luffy lays back down to make himself more comfortable. Oh, and Rayleigh. Thanks. The next morning, Luffy had a bit of trouble waking up since he slept with the Sea Prism Stone handcuff stuck to his wrists. Rayleigh neglected to mention to the boys sooner that he didn't have the key for them, or that they were the only pair of cuffs that he had on his person. But with a whack to the head from a Haki-infused wooden club, Luffy was now wide awake, and with a comical bump on his head. After getting ready, the teacher and student made their way to a clearing with enough space to not harm the island's ecosystem, if Luffy ever got out of hand with any collateral damage. Alright, Luffy, Rayleigh said, you've almost mastered the hardening stage of armament Haki, so you're gonna be sparring against me next. Since you can't use your devil fruit powers, you'll have to get used to moving around in that fragile body. This training is designed to help build up your muscles at a much faster rate than you ever had back when you were made of rubber. Be warned, though, this training will put you under a lot of stress and pain, but all your hardships will be rewarded with developing your observation Haki. So while we're sparring, I'm not gonna hold anything back. And I want you to do the same. Now, I know this may sound unfair since you're the one with the handicap, so I'll do my best not to kill you. Sounds good to me. Luffy didn't seem scared in the slightest. If anything, he actually looks more serious than ever. Good. Your first lesson will be to defend yourself from my attacks. But before that, Rayleigh walks behind Luffy and ties a blindfold around his eyes. You rely far too much on your vision, so we'll need to prevent you from doing that in the future. Huh? I can't see. Luffy struggles to get a good feel of his surroundings, and starts waving his arms around, trying to get his bearings. Leave that on for a while, and let yourself get used to it. Okay. Luffy takes a couple of slow steps forward before he quickly trips over a small rock in his path. Luckily, he stopped his descent by swiftly putting the other foot forward. Damn it, this is gonna be tough, Luffy complained, standing back up straight. How do you even sense rocks? This is training, Rayleigh reminded him. You have to use all of your senses, not just your eyesight. No matter how good your eyes may be, you'll never see everything. Enemies that can move at the speed of sound must be detected through other methods. Once you develop your observation Haki, you can intercept their attacks. After carefully processing Rayleigh's teachings, Luffy slams his fist into his palm. Right. I'm ready, so let's do it. Luffy stands completely still, arms to the side, legs spread, and fists tightened. He focuses on the sound around him. The sound of the wind blowing through the trees, the birds chirping, and the cries of the distant animals. But his main focus is his sparring partner. There. Bonk. DRR everything hurts like hell. It's like I told you, pain is the most effective teacher when mastering Haki. After many hours of bone-breaking abuse and soul-crushing discipline at the hands of his merciless mentor, Luffy made little, yet noticeable, progress in today's training. Even after the countless bruises and bumps he suffered, Luffy didn't let up for even a second, nor did he ask Rayleigh to let him catch his breath. He almost couldn't believe how much endurance Luffy had, even when the added durability that came with his own fruit had been restrained along with his powers. That fire in his eyes never went out. Today's training session seems to have turned up the heat. This development did not elude the attention of the Pirate King's first mate. After giving Luffy some first aid, the two were now sitting around a campfire, with Luffy eating a huge chunk of meat right off the bone, like he hadn't eaten in days. Slow down, you're gonna choke yourself. Remember, your rubbery powers are disabled right now. Luffy didn't respond, and instead just kept on devouring the source of protein. Back when he was just a kid, Luffy used to eat when he was upset. A habit that won't end anytime soon. Before he could take another bite, Rayleigh asked his student a serious question. Luffy, you were behaving a little differently today. What changed? Luffy froze. He slowly puts his half-eaten carcass back on the spit. An act of manners that Rayleigh thought he would never see out of the Rubberman. When I think about all I've been through, all the battles I've fought, there's only one thing that I've learned from all of that. Rayleigh waited patiently for an answer, which first came in the form of Luffy's flames of determination burning in his eyes. There's always someone stronger. The old man was slightly shocked at how much more mature Luffy was becoming. When the two first met at the human auctioning house at Sabati Archipelago, Rayleigh's first impression of Luffy was mostly based around the straw hat he wore, reminiscing about the times when his former crewmate, Shanks, used to wear that exact same hat. but he neglected to see what was beneath that until he started training Luffy and getting to know him better. Now he was seeing Luffy in a whole new light. A light that was brought to life by the fire in Luffy's eyes. I made a vow to my brother a long time ago that I was going to get stronger than anybody. But in the end, he died because I wasn't strong enough to protect him. But no more. I've lost more than I could stand. And if I can't even protect my crew and their dreams, then how could I call myself their captain? I need this training. I can't afford any setbacks. No matter what I have to endure, I need to be the strongest before I meet up with my crew. Even stronger than Roger. I won't accept anything less. Rayleigh, full of pride for his students' newfound motivation, smiled. So, your strength comes from protecting your friends, is that it? Yeah. In that case, Rayleigh pointed 2 fingers in the direction of Luffy's glowing eyes, keeping that fire burning in your eyes. Never let it snuff out. Keep your friends close to your heart at all times. Let those images fuel your flame, and keep rising higher, Luffy. Luffy felt more determined than ever after that. The thought of his friends, and the memories they made together was washing over his mind like a maelstrom. You're thinking about them right now, aren't you? Rayleigh asked as if it was obvious. Aha, Luffy answered, I just wonder what everyone's up to. You still have something left in this world to treasure, don't you? The encouraging words of Jinbei echoed in his thoughts. I still have my CRAW. Luffy whispered to himself, Zoro, Luffy's first mate and swordsman of the Straw Hat Pirates. A muscular man of average height in his late teens with lightly tanned skin and moss-green hair. He always carried around 3 swords for the sake of his 3-sword style. Before joining Luffy's crew, he was a renowned and feared bounty hunter who was known throughout the East Blue for his expertise in hunting down wanted pirates, thus earning him the name Pirate Hunter Urano Zoro. While I'm with you, the only thing I dedicate myself to is fulfilling my ambition to be nothing less than the world's greatest swordsman. I solemnly swear from this moment forward that I will never lose again. Until the day comes when I defeat him and take his title, I will never be defeated. Is that okay, King of the Pirates? Usopp, the crew's sniper and resident liar. A slim tan-skinned teenager with medium-length black curly hair and a very long nose. Usopp was a cowardly fella, known for his constant lies and tall tales that he enjoys telling to both friends and strangers alike. Despite his disposition, he strives to become a great pirate as well as better himself, working hard to keep his crew safe and help them accomplish their dreams as well as his own. Luffy welcomed him aboard his newly acquired ship, the Going Merry, after helping him save his village from the devious Captain Kuro of 1,000 Plans and his crew, the Black Cat Pirates. Usopp, I am the captain of the Usopp Pirates, a brave warrior of the sea. And mark my words, you will never set foot in that village. Get on already. Ha, we're friends, right? So, get on. I'm really a pirate captain now. Don't be stupid, Usopp. I'm the captain. Nami the navigator and self-imposed treasurer of the Straw Hat Pirates. A slim young woman of average height with short orange hair. If Luffy weren't so oblivious to womanly charm, he would consider her to be very attractive. She has a blue tattoo on her left shoulder, which represents tangerines and pinwheels, a reminder of her hometown. Before joining the crew, Nami was a thief who specialized in robbing pirates of their treasure. Luffy helped me, he's gonna pay. Luffy, Nami, you'll always be my friend. Yeah. Sanji, a highly skilled cook and womanizer. He's a slim, muscular, long-legged man with blonde hair which he keeps brushed over to one side of his face. Sanji's most distinctive feature is his spiral-shaped eyebrows. Luffy meets Sanji at the Floating Sea restaurant, Barady, where Sanji worked as the South chef. The owner and head chef, Zeph, was a former pirate who sacrificed his left leg to save Sanji from starvation when they were both marooned on a rock outcropping, high above sea level. Sanji takes great pride in his culinary skills, resorting to using only his legs to fight, for he cannot risk any harm to come to his hands, a cook's most sacred tool. Say, have you ever heard of the All Blue? Your dream is foolish. Then again, so is mine. Now's as good a time as any. Why not start my quest now? I'll be joining your little crew on your journey to be king of the pirates. You hear me? I want to be the cook on your ship. Chef Zeph. Thanks, you geezer. I'll never forget your kindness. I owe my life to you, old man. So, thank you. And Chopper, too, the ship's doctor. Chopper is a toddler-sized human reindeer hybrid with a blue nose who ate the human fruit, a zone-type devil fruit, granting him the ability to talk and walk upright like a human. He was trained in the art of medicine by his parental figure, Dr. Kariha. He used to be extremely timid towards unfamiliar humans before he met Luffy, with whom he later found out had a lot in common. Luffy accepted Chopper for who he was and convinced him to become a pirate with him. Even if I don't have friends, I can still fight for something I believe in. You do have friends. I'm your friend, reindeer. And me. Okay, maybe I do want to be a pirate. But I can never be one of you, I'm not human. I'm a monster. Shut up. Let's, Geo. Robin, the archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates, and user of the flower fruit, a paramecia-type devil fruit, granting her the power to willingly reproduce any parts of her body on any surface. She's a tall, slender young woman with shoulder-length black hair. Having nowhere else to go after the Straw Hat stopped a civil war in the desert kingdom of Alabasta, she held Luffy responsible for saving her life when she had given up on it. She temporarily left the crew after being captured by the world government covert assassins, CP9, at Water 7, and escorted to the judicial island, Enies Lobby, where she suffered continuous torture at the hands of Spandam, CP9's chief. She was soon rescued by her crewmates after Luffy encouraged her to keep on living, despite the fear she had of losing those she cared about to her enemies. There's no place for me to go or return to, so I've decided that I'll join you. What? Those pirates just declared war against the world government. Robin, there's still something I wanna hear you say. Tell me you wanna live. I want to live. Take me with you. Take me away from here. Frankie, the shipwright of the Straw Hat Pirates, creator of the crew's current ship, the Thousand Sunny, and former ship dismantler, and face of Water 7's underworld. Frankie is a self-modified cyborg at a height of at least 7 feet. His forearms were massively enormous with star tattoos on them, while his biceps were comparably small, and a full-toned chest. He has bright blue hair, and a prosthetic iron nose. Frankie used to run a gang of ship dismantlers and bounty hunters called the Frankie family, named after their founder and leader, until he stole 200 million berries from the Straw Hat Pirates. He later kidnapped Usopp and severely damaged Going Merry after Luffy's crew retaliated against the Frankie family, while the boss himself went shopping on the black market with their stolen money. After getting tangled up in the same situation that got Robin captured, he was also taken to Impel Down to be interrogated by Spandam on the whereabouts of the blueprints for the ancient weapon Pluton, which Frankie inherited from his old shipbuilding master Tom. Frankie burned the blueprints so that the ancient weapon could never be built. While fighting through and escaping Enies Lobby with the Straw Hat Pirates, they eventually patched things up until Luffy eventually invited him to join his crew after building the Thousand Sunny. If you want your undies back, then you're gonna have to join my crew. You got the finest vessel on the sea, and no shipwright. What can I say? You don't leave me much choice. I gotta take care of my masterpiece, after all. So, set sail. I'm joining the crew. I'm gonna super miss you all. And Brooke, the musician of the Straw Hat Pirates, and former member of the Rumber Pirates. An extremely tall reanimated skeleton with a large black afro with strong roots that was brought back to life after dying, thanks to the powers of the Revive fruit, a paramecia-type devil fruit, which grants the user a second chance at life. Brooke once sailed the seas with a pirate crew of musicians, until they were annihilated by another stronger pirate crew. Unable to steer the ship, Brooke's soul found itself lost in the thick fog of the Florian Triangle. At the time he reunited with his body again, all that was left was a well-dressed skeleton, but he was still able to get a second chance at life to fulfill a promise he and his crew made to an island whale named Laboon, whom they told to wait for them at the entrance to the Grand Line. Determined to stay true to that promise, he accepts Luffy's invitation to join the Straw Hats, in hopes of seeing Laboon again. I'm glad to hear that Laboon is well, and still waiting for me. My shadow has returned, and we're leaving the Devil's Sea. Every day on that boat was difficult. Frankly, I had given up all hope. But Luffy, you know what? I'm just so happy to still be Ali hi HIV. Suo, does the offer to join your crew still stand? Yeah, welcome aboard. What? For real? No way. Luffy cares about his crew more than anything, and he knew they felt the same way about him. They were now his sole reason for getting stronger. His crewmates are much more than just his friends, they were also his source of strength. His lifeline. He thought he lost them for good after they got into a fight with Bartholomew Kume, one of the 7 warlords of the seas. They were hopelessly overpowered by the enigmatic Titan, who then went on to separate the Straw Hat Pirates individually with the powers of his paw fruit, a strange paramecia-type devil fruit which gives the user paw-shaped pads on their palms that can repel anything they touch with tremendous force and distances. Kuma sent Luffy's friends flying to unknown corners of the world, himself included. Since he was able to land safely on Amazon Lily, he assumed the rest of his crew were still alive. Not knowing their whereabouts, Luffy sent out a secret message that only his crew could decipher in the local newspaper. The original plan on the Sabati archipelago was to wait 3 days for Rayleigh to finish coating their ship, making it worthy to travel safely underwater to get to Fishman Island, their last destination before going to the New World. But the whole crew separated the world over. It would have been impossible to meet back up at Sabati in just 3 days, so Luffy decided to give his friends 2 years to hone their skills and increase their chances of survival in the New World. Thus, Luffy purposely went back to the war-scarred island of Marineford to get his photo taken, as well as pay his respects to Ace's grave. The photo that was published showed Luffy with his eyes closed and holding his straw hat up to his chest, after throwing a bouquet of flowers into the rubble, bowing his head in silent prayer. He successfully got his message across with a tattoo on his right arm, which showed the initials 3D2Y, with the 3D crossed out. The message translated to "See you at Sabati in 2 years." Being able to read Luffy like a book throughout the time they've known each other, Rayleigh easily predicts what his student was thinking right now. That's why I have to get stronger, so I can protect my friends, so I can fight to make their dreams come true, just like they do for me. Who knows, maybe your friends are thinking the exact same thing. Perhaps they all want to get stronger, just like you. Yeah, Luffy sighed, finally feeling satisfied with his current minsut. With his goals now on a straight path, he was prepared for what was to come during the remaining 21 months of training. No matter what challenges await him, Mickey D. Luffy will rise above it all. Another brutal day of Haki training goes by for the legendary pirate in training. Come nightfall, Luffy was in the middle of devouring another huge chunk of meat off the bone. With the restriction of his baseline rubbery body, Luffy had been eating less food than he normally does. At least 5% less. After quickly getting used to wearing sea prism stone handcuffs for the last couple of days, Luffy no longer felt like he was being drained of energy, although he still can't stretch. This intensified his training to new bounds. Today, he attempted to improve his armament, hardening by fighting the colossal animals of Lascana. He could no longer afford to keep taking hits from the beasts, since his devil fruit powers had been cancelled out, so he was forced to resort to constant dodging, something he was not the best at. But Rayleigh told him it was the perfect excuse to train his observation Haki, by predicting where, and, eventually, when the attacks would strike. Luffy's first opponent was a massive blue gorilla the size of a house. Following Rayleigh's instructions, Luffy prioritized speed over strength, and let the opponent make the first move. Luffy's speed was growing by leaps and bounds. Before the revision to his new training regiment, Luffy demonstrated second gear to his mentor, explaining how it made him move at mind-boggling speeds. Rayleigh later identified this speed feat as Shave, one of his 6 powers. The 6 powers is a special, superhuman martial arts style that is mostly used by agents of the world government. Anyone who could master the 6 powers is said to have the strength of 100 men. Shave allows the user to move at extremely high speeds, making them seem like they disappeared. This technique is mostly used for avoiding attacks, as well as to attack at higher speeds, which can generate greater power. The first time Luffy witnessed Shave was when it was used by Bueno, a member of CP9, back at Eni's lobby. After carefully observing how his opponent moved with the technique, it was revealed that the principle of executing it properly was to kick off the ground at least 10 times in the blink of an eye. Unable to pull it off in his base form, Luffy utilized his second gear by pumping up his metabolism and allowing him to move at disappearing speeds, which surpassed Bueno's. After explaining how second gear works, Rayleigh decided to make the technique redundant. Consecutive use of second gear was really dangerous and taxing to Luffy's body. His increased blood flow gave his body more oxygen and nutrients, which is what makes him move a lot faster. Since his blood vessels and organs were made of rubber, he was able to handle it. But he never noticed the price that came with it. The more Luffy uses second gear, the more oxygen and energy he ends up burning through, which can be quite straining on the body. In his second gear form, Luffy's body glows a light shade of red, and steam starts billowing from his body like a steam train. The steam is the result of his entire metabolism rate going up so high that his sweat evaporates. So Rayleigh decides to teach Luffy how to use the 6 powers in place of second gear, which will benefit Luffy in the long run. This was one of the reasons Rayleigh had Luffy get used to the feel of Sea Prism Stone, to overcome hypothetical situations where his enemies try to restrain his powers, but still, give him the strength to fight back. After all, the sea only cursed devil fruit users, while Haki and the 6 powers can still be used. Unfortunately, Rayleigh didn't know very much about the 6 powers, except for only knowing how to use Shave and Finger Pistol. Finger Pistol is a close-range combat technique that allows the user to push their finger into their target at a very high speed, leaving a wound similar to a bullet hole. This technique is more deadly than most bullets, as it is sharp and agile enough to penetrate even iron-hard defenses. Rayleigh decided to hold off on this form of training until after Luffy completely mastered Haki. He had planned on teaching Luffy how to combine Finger Pistol with the long-range capabilities of his stretchy powers. Luffy had a rocky start when fighting the Blue Gorilla, along with some other animals later on, for he also had to wear the blindfold again to train his observation Haki, making things a whole lot more difficult. But that's exactly what Luffy wanted. No matter how many times Luffy slipped up, he always got right back up. After the vexing day he had, Luffy was currently venting his frustrations out on his dinner, while recalling the events that occurred. He was able to deflect and intercept most of the attacks from the large animals, while at other times he got away with a few scrapes and cuts. After fighting the Blue Gorilla, Luffy ended up having to avoid the jaws of a massive alligator to the crushing paws of a titanic lion. Luckily, his teacher was there to step in if things ever got out of hand. Damn, Luffy complained through a mouthful of meat. I swear, all the animals are ganging up on me. He swallows before taking another bite. I'll get him back as soon as I'm done eating. Do you think that's wise? Rayleigh asked, with a mug in his hand, going back for round 2 before giving your body time to recover. Yeah. I'm tired of getting beat by those MMM. Luffy gagged as choked on his dinner. Dropping the half-eaten bone, he pumps his chest to help swallow what was stuck in his throat, until he finally manages to make the food go the right way. Luffy let out a relieving sigh. Rayleigh let out a disappointed sigh. Keep that up, and it won't be the training that kills you. Your body's not used to eating as much as you're used to yet, so don't talk while eating, the old man asked, enjoying his drink. Got it, Luffy said, feeling a little embarrassed. Luffy then finishes the rest of his meal, this time at a more moderate speed, then chugs down the rest of his drink. He then immediately picks up his blindfold and ties it back on before standing up and marching off toward the dark jungle. Later. I see. Try not to die, his teacher casually said with a smirk. Right? Luffy responded, punching the air above him while continuing on his way. Keeping his senses on high alert at all times, Luffy made his way through the dark jungle, which isn't saying much for a man with a blindfold on. After trekking through for a while, it would seem that the animals have decided to call it quits for the day, since he hasn't been able to pick up any trace of their presence. Ha! Where did all of them run off to? They didn't go to sleep, did they? Luffy asked in annoyance. Hey Mr. Gorilla. Mr. Alligator. Mr. Lion. I'm ready. Come out and fight me. Stopping in his tracks, Luffy sniffed around. Hey, what's that? Catching a whiff of something, his mouth began to water. Whatever it is, it smells really tasty. Luffy muttered, following his nose. Where's it coming from? He then walks off to do a little private investigating of the scent. Suddenly, his train of thought had shifted. Hold on a sec. Luffy stopped, realizing that something wasn't right. Since he just ate, he was no longer hungry enough to fall for the tempting aroma of delicious food. Whatever it was that allured his nose, it smells a hell of a lot better than meat cooked over a fire. There were traces of spices and seasonings mixed in as well. Wiping the drool from his mouth, Luffy steeled himself, reminding himself that he and Rayleigh were the only two humans on the island. So why would there be the smell of cooking here? The animals he had been fighting on Wishino always behaved like wild and destructive beasts, clearly incapable of something as advanced as cooking. It could only mean one thing. Someone else is on this island, Luffy muttered cautiously. Not far from where the smell of food was coming from, a group of women are hiding in the dense foliage at the edge of the jungle, looking out into the ocean of the calm belt. They were all dressed in provocative warrior-style clothing, such as bikini-like straps to cover their breasts, very short loin clothes on their lower regions, and thigh-length boots with stockings on their legs. Some were even wearing long capes from shoulder to ankles. These were but a few members of the Kuja, a tribe of all-female warriors, and residents of Amazon Lily. Each warrior carries a large snake wrapped around them, which the Kuja use as a bow. Amazon Lily and the Kuja pirates were ruled by the three Gorgon sisters, with the eldest, Boa Hancock, as their ruler and captain. She is known as the Pirate Empress, for her status as one of the 7 warlords of the sea. She is considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Among those that were hiding in the foliage is the middle sister of the Gorgon sisters, Boa Sandersonia. She is a large woman who resembles a snake due to her long forked tongue sticking out of her mouth. She has a curvaceous figure and large breasts. Her head, while disproportionately large and white to her body, is topped with long green hair. Unlike her subordinates, she does not have a snake to use as a weapon. Second was her younger sister, Boa Marigold. A large bulky woman, with a build similar to that of a sumo wrestler, with large breasts to go with it. Her orange hair is arranged in a way to make it look like the pattern on a cobra's hood. Below the 2 Gorgon sisters were 3 of their subjects. The first, and tallest, was Aphilandra, an extremely tall woman with childlike facial features. She has long orange-brown hair, falling past her shoulders, with a plumed Morion-type helmet with cheek guards on her head. She carries a sheathed sword horizontally over her lower back. Next to her is Sweet Pea, a very large corpulent woman with a masculine-like build with brown pigtails. She's one of the many Kuja warriors who carry a snake as a weapon. And finally, there's Margaret, a young Kuja lady who is quite tall for her age. She has short unruly blonde hair, long slender legs, and a slim curvaceous figure. Compared to the other women present, Margaret's the most normal-looking one. She keeps her snake wrapped around her waist. The group of women was sent to Lascana at the request of their leader, Boa Hancock, to deliver some supplies to Luffy, which mostly consisted of freshly cooked food. He didn't want to accept the food, since it would just spoil him, but the Pirate Empress couldn't help herself. After sorting out a misunderstanding when Luffy was sent to Amazon Lily by Bartholomew Kuma, he gained the trust of the Gorgon sisters for protecting a traumatizing secret that they hid from the rest of their subjects. Luffy understood the story behind their dark secret, and declared that he despises the ones responsible for the sisters' suffering. As a result, Hancock fell helplessly in love with Luffy, as well as pledged her loyalty to him. The young man was oblivious to her affections, and never returned them in kind. But that didn't stop the Pirate Empress from trying to win over his heart. She was worried that Luffy wasn't getting enough to sustain his health, so she sent her crew to deliver food for him discreetly, despite the promise she made to Rayleigh not to interfere with Luffy's training by pampering him. A buffet was laid out on a small plateau overlooking the sea. Nearby, the Kuja pirates are hiding in the darkness of the trees, waiting patiently for Luffy to arrive so they could observe him and report his condition and status to Hancock. While they waited for their mutual friend to arrive, Sandersonia was holding an active transponder snail, a species of telepathic snail that is used for vocal and or visual communication throughout the world. Connected on the other side of the snail was Boa Hancock's voice. Well, is he there yet? Hancock asks worriedly, her voice coming out of the snail's mouth. Not yet, Sandersonia answered. We're still waiting for him. Ooh, I hope she shows up soon. I don't want the food getting cold. Hancock whined. Don't worry, sister. There's no way Luffy can resist the smell of gourmet cooking. Marigold reassures her sister. He'll show up. Oh, I hope so. The longer we wait, the more likely you'll be discovered by Rayleigh instead. Despite his suspicion that an intruder could be nearby, the overwhelming aroma of the scent that Luffy was following was too much to resist. His nose eventually let him close enough to the source that he began drooling again. That Luffy sniffed, smells like food. Okay, I gotta see. He excitedly rips off his blindfold to behold a large spread of food set up on a low table. Ah! I knew it, Luffy exclaimed before running to the buffet, but quickly slowed down. Is all this stuff for me? Who could've? Luffy stopped to inspect what was laid out in front of him. The most noticeable dish she recognized was a large pot of pan-gorgonzola with sea king meat, a dish that Luffy fondly remembered eating back on Amazon Lily. Not those guys again, Hancock, Luffy groaned, finally realizing without a doubt who the intruders he was sensing were. I appreciate what they're doing, but I'm not hungry at the moment, he complained to no one in particular. Closing his eyes, he focused his observation Haki to locate the auras of anyone he was familiar with. It didn't take long for him to feel the presence of 5 figures hiding nearby. Found him, he thought, turning his head towards the jungle. He casually matches towards the spot where he sensed a group when he sensed someone else. Someone unfamiliar, someone hostile. His concerns were realized when 3 people, Margaret, Sweet Pea, and Aphilandra, were suddenly flung out of the dark foliage and slid painfully across the overlook until they were right next to Luffy, who was shocked at the state they were in. Girls. Luffy called out, are you okay? Luffy, run away. Margaret cried out fearfully to him. Run from what? Luffy asked, worriedly crouching down to examine their beaten forms. Who did this to you? Before he could get an answer, he heard and felt the sound of heavy footsteps as he looked up. Emerging from the trees was a very tall and broad man with thick arms and thin legs. He had a beard and a W-shaped mustache, both a different shade of green. He wore a horn helmet with the left horn broken off, an open black and purple sleeveless coat revealing his chest, green pants, a brown belt, and brown shoes. Under his coat, he had a thick iron chain from his left shoulder to his right hip. Sitting on his left shoulder was a short and scrawny old man with a long white beard and mustache. He wore a green coat and a short horned helmet with the right horn missing, similar to the larger man. He was carrying what appeared to be a portable support pole, holding an IV drip that was injected into his right arm. Standing back up straight, Luffy leered at the newcomers, for he noticed that the larger man was carrying Sandersonia and Marigold unconscious bodies underneath each of his arms. Hey, you! Luffy shouted, eyes full of rage. What did you do to my friends? Biojack, who's he? The larger man asked, raising an eyebrow at Luffy in annoyance. Earlier, before getting ambushed by the unknown intruder, Margaret and the girls were carefully waiting for Luffy to appear. He finally showed up, wearing only his sandals, shorts, and a blindfold. Taking off the blindfold and noticing the food they laid out for him, the girls began to giggle in excitement. Luffy has found the food, Sandersonia whispered into the transponder snail. Yeah, it's him alright. HAOAH Hancock moaned in delight from the other side of the connection, as if she was about to faint. Luffy's THERA. But when the girls noticed that he didn't start stuffing his face right away, they got a little concerned thinking something didn't seem right. Luffy usually has such a big appetite, Aphilandra said worriedly. I wonder what's wrong. Why, I don't think he even noticed the frilly spring outfits we made for him, Sweet Pea added. Margaret frowned. What's going on? Hancock asked. Did he like it? Something's wrong, sis. Luffy's not eating, he's just standing there, glaring at the food, Sandersonia answered. Maybe he's not hungry? Asked Marigold. I'm looking for the Empress, said a deep voice from behind, the leader of Amazon Lily. The Kuja pirates turned around, gasping at the sudden presence. With a wicked grin, the large helmet-wearing man backhanded Sandersonia, causing her to slide roughly across the dirt and drop her transponder snail. Who are you? Marigold demanded, holding her giant palm in both hands, while the rest of the female warriors readied their own weapons. State your business. Since you asked, the name's Bernie World, the large man answered, uncaringly. I'm here to kidnap the government's dog, Boa Hancock. Have you heard of her? Marigold gasped, shocked by what she heard. You wish to kidnap the princess? Asked Margaret, pulling back an arrow with her snake bow, and taking aim at World. She is not here, but we shall face you ourselves. Declared Sweet Pea, readying her weapon the same way as Margaret. World flinched, Woody said, glaring at the small elderly man, Biojack, sitting on his shoulder. Biojack started with a raspy voice. I didn't make any promises, right? I just saw the Kuja's ship on the shore, and thought she might be here. We just got unlucky this time, no big deal, the old man finished before taking a few sickly coughs into his hand. What a waste of my time, World said disappointingly before turning around and walking away. Hold it, demanded Marigold, causing World to stop. You can't come here to kidnap my sister, and then walk away. Marigold's body then starts transforming. She grew larger with scales appearing all over her body, her legs were replaced with a long tail, and her face grew more snake-like. The power granted to her by this own-type devil fruit, snake fruit model. King Cobra. If you want to fight, then you shall find one at the end of my blade. World slowly turned around, and looked at her with mild curiosity. You're her sister. Hey Sonia. Mary. Someone tell me what's going on right now. Hancock's voice demanded. Do you hear me please, say something. Lolololo. World laughed, looking down at the snail lying on his side on the ground. I see, the Empress is on the other side of that snail. In that case, World suddenly dashed towards Marigold. He drove his Haki-coated fist at Marigold, who stopped the punch with the blade of her poem. The sudden movement kicked up a cloud of dust between the two. More tenfold shotgun. World chanted, blowing some air at the dust, causing it to launch at Marigold's face like bullets. Marigold cried out in pain as the attack knocked her to the ground. You keep your hands off her, or else, shouted Margaret as she and Sweet Pea unleashed their arrows at the man who attacked the royal sisters. World easily evaded the arrows with blinding speed. Lolololo. He laughed before pulling his fist back and charging at the three warriors. Now, I have no business with the rest of you, said World, giving the group a threatening look, so time to die. Fat chance, you bastard. Luffy lost it and charged straight at the menacing man. He soaked his fists with armament Haki and slugged World right across the face, to which he didn't even flinch. At the last moment, before Luffy's fists made contact, World coated his entire head in armament Haki, making it feel like he had punched a solid wall. Hey, kiddo, World said casually, glaring at him, what are you doing? Before Luffy could pull back, World swung his leg around and kicked Luffy in the gut, sending him flying and crashing into a large stone outcrop. The impact was strong enough to leave Luffy's broken body imprinted into solid stone, stuck as he tried his best to struggle out and recover. But World didn't give him that luxury. He dropped Santa Sonia like a hunted game before picking up a small rock off the ground. Say goodbye. He casually tosses it up and down in his hand before shouting out, more hundredfold gun, and threw the rock right at Luffy. That wouldn't work, he started, but he briefly forgot that he was no longer made of rubber. And before he could react, the rock suddenly grew 100 times its original size, becoming a huge boulder, and was coated in armament Haki. The hardened boulder slammed into Luffy, causing him to scream in pain before blacking out. Get over here, I think Luffy's awake. Luffy heard a voice as he was starting to regain consciousness. He knew the voice had to belong to Rayleigh since he recognized his face as he struggled to open his eyes. However, Luffy blacked out once again, only briefly. After another minute had passed, he opened his eyes again, his vision now much more clear. It was now the break of dawn, and he spotted three more familiar faces, looking down anxiously at him. Hancock. Luffy said weakly, what are you doing here? You finally woke up, Hancock said, relieved that the man she loves is finally awake. What a relief. Oh, Hancock is considered the most beautiful woman in the world. She has a well-proportioned figure compared to her abnormally sized sisters. She is tall and slender with long black hair that extends past her waist with locks that frame her face, showing off her forehead. She has dark brown eyes with long voluptuous eyelashes, and pale skin, with a narrow waist, and very large breasts. Hancock wore a purple dress with gold trim, and a grey light purple image of her Jolly Roger at the bottom, black heels on her feet, and large gold snake-shaped earrings hanging from both her ears. Behind Hancock was her snake weapon, Salome. Salome is a large white female snake with big pink spots running down her whole body, while the underside was a pale yellow, with thin black lines across it. Her head was topped with a cracked horned skull with blue hair jutting out from the back, like a lion's mane. She also wore a purple scarf tied around her neck. The last familiar face was Gloriosa, more commonly referred to as Elder Nine, a short, wrinkly old woman with very thick lips, and white hair with a pink flower on the left side of her head. She wore a sort of green bubble belt, meant to hold up her short spotted skirt, as well as a cape around her shoulders. Her purple snake weapon acted like a staff, with the upper body curled up. Luffy grimaced in pain as he struggled to push himself up into a sitting position. Don't try to get up, Rayleigh said, you still haven't fully recovered yet. Ignoring his teacher, Luffy jolted his head around, and shouted, oh, yeah, what happened to the girls? They were treated for their wounds, and they're sleeping, Gloriosa answered calmly, before lowering her head in grief. As for Sonia and Mary, that bastard kidnapped them, didn't he? Luffy asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, Gloriosa nodded. Luffy was furious at that fact, damn it. What the hell was that guy's deal, anyway? Hancock stood tall before answering. From the sound of it, he wanted something from me because I'm one of the warlords. Are you going to rescue your sisters? Rayleigh asked. Of course. Hancock said firmly, thinking how that was even a real question. Princess, Gloriosa interjected, if he really is the notorious Bernie World, then even you're too weak to challenge him. Hancock, take me with you. Luffy interrupted, startling his elders. If we fight him together, there's no way I'll lose to him. Hancock gasped in shock. Normally, she wouldn't expect her love interest to be so insistent. Luffy, hold on, Rayleigh spoke up. The reason that we upped your training here is because you're not strong enough to fight opponents like him. I haven't given up on that. You are improving a lot faster, but you still have a long way to go before you can completely master Haki. And without your devil fruit powers, you'll be killed. I'm not gonna lose to him twice. Luffy shouted. Luffy, think about it. Rayleigh shouted back, what have you been training yourself for all this time? If you leave now, you might never see your friends again. But Luffy frowned, feeling like Rayleigh was using his friends as an excuse to stay put. He raises his right fist, and gently presses it against his chest, taking a moment to remind himself why he took his training more seriously than before. Hancock, and the others are my friends too. If I just abandoned them when they're in trouble, and I could have done something to help them, then I'd be turning my back on the vow that I made to Ace, and my friends. Luffy tightened his right fist, unaware that it was now coated in armament Haki. Luffy then shouted, so how can you expect me to just sit here, and do nothing while the people I care about are in danger? Oh, Luffy, Hancock murmured, before turning her attention to the old man. Rayleigh, I promise I'll keep him safe. With him at my side, we'll finish this quickly. Rayleigh looked rather annoyed at her insistence, but sighed tiredly. It doesn't matter what I say, Rayleigh said, I'm not going to change your mind. This got a smile out of both Luffy and Hancock. Rayleigh then stands back up on his feet. That's why I'm coming with you. Ha. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.